All right, microphones on, folks. Cell phones silenced, please. I think we got them down, yep. All right. Good evening, everybody. It's 6:31. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. Today is October 17th, 2017. It's a Tuesday night, and we'd like you to join us for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Secretary is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Roger Zappa, Township Attorney, our Township Manager Randy Gerard, and our Fire Chief Ron DeMars is here. Committee members present is Mike Springer from Planning, Recreation, and Roads.
Thank you. Public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please come up. Do we have one microphone?
Just one,
We have
yeah.
the podium. Please come up and give us your name and address. And preferably 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Rachel Guth. I'm the administrator at the Conservation District over here at 780 Commerce Drive. I'm here tonight to basically bring up a proposal that our district has put into the state of Michigan. We've already put in for the pre-proposal, and we've been given the order to go through with the full proposal. So that's a good sign. That means that our project that we sent to the state was something that they were really interested in, and at this point they want to hear more about it. So the project that we put in was for the Aquatic Habitat Grant. This is a yearly grant that the state of Michigan provides for aquatic habitat restoration, and there's a bunch of different things that you can do for this particular grant. The project that I put in was a restoration on Brickyard Creek. So I was kind of looking at your map because we actually put 2 projects into this grant, but I believe that only one of them is actually in Marquette Township. I think the other one might be in Negaunee. So what we want to do, where the new entrance to Meyer is, there's a stream right there, and I'm sure many of you have seen it. It's right next to the development where TJ Maxx and Lowe's and everything has gone in. And basically this whole area of the stream, which is known as the Riparian Zone, has been basically, the development has caused most of the riparian vegetation to be removed, and now it's really thick with invasive species and tag elder. Now, this tributary flows into the Dead River. It's a very important brook trout nursery stream. So the brook trout come into the stream, they spawn, then the fry hatch out, and very important for the Dead River. In between 2 big dams, there's only a few nursery tributaries for brook trout, so this is a big one. So the idea is that we will remove all the tag elder, pull all the invasives out, and replant that riparian zone. Plant it with native conifers to provide shading, because any river needs shading in order to keep the water temperatures down. Cold water is extremely important to brook trout. So we want to replant the area with native flowers, native grasses, native shrubs, and trees. And basically what that's going to do, every time people pull in there, they're going to have this beautiful project that we're going to be able to show off to the community, have a sign. I've already got the DNR supporting this project. They're actually the ones who brought it to my attention. So this is one part of the project. The other part of the project is working on Norwald Creek, which is just up Brickyard Road, but I believe it's out of the township property. But on that stream, we have a really bad perched culvert that is basically a fish passage barrier, so brook trout can't move up and down the stream, which they need and want to do. So we're looking to basically fix up both of these tributaries, provide better brook trout habitat for the Dead River. And basically the proposal is due, the full proposal is due November 13th. I wanted to bring it to your attention in the hopes that maybe the township would like to provide support to the district. And that could be a letter of support, just saying, hey, this project is really awesome. We have a lot of development. It would be nice to see us kind of fix up our watersheds and do whatever we can to support the fisheries, or any kind of match that the township could provide. So I brought a copy of the proposal that I put in. I can leave it here with you. My contact information is there. If you guys think this is a cool project and you want to support it, please let me know. Or anytime that you want to partner with the Conservation District and try to, I don't know, do any projects in the community, we are always looking for support, help, ideas, etc.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Yes,
Yeah.
I'll take that, definitely. We can talk about it briefly right here, too. We have a spot on our agenda. Thanks for coming, too, by the way. Rachel emailed me and asked if we would support her. Do we have any questions for her? I was kind of wondering the size of the area you're talking about. Is it just a little corner, or is it going to kind of go up farther? Is it like half a mile, or?
Can you go over the microphone, please?
Please, yeah, so it ends up on YouTube in the recording. I'm sorry I didn't catch you sooner.
So in our proposal, we're asking to restore the riparian zone along 200 meters of the stream. So you're talking both sides of the stream, about 400 meters of linear stream length. And then from outside of there, we'll roughly go 75 to 100 meters, kind of depending on what area we are allowed to work with. I mean, obviously, we're going to hit a road on one side. But once you get past where the development has really interrupted the stream and you've got a lot of tag elder growing, from there it's forested. So that's really great for the trout. And it's a lot of private land, so I don't see any further development impacting the system. So we're just talking about 200 meters of stream length. If you pull into Brickyard Road, where everybody will be going into Meyer, it's right there on the left. You can't miss it. There's a guardrail, there's a stream flowing, and it's just choked with invasive species and tag elder at this point. So,
Any other questions for her? Okay, thanks.
thanks.
Anybody else wish to address the board? Okay, then we have board member comment in response to the public comment. Does anybody have anything they want to add? Does this sound like be something we'd want to support, and how would you see us doing that? Ernie?
Being that it's going to be, really it's a development within the township type, maybe we should get Jason involved with it so we can actually get a map of some type so we know what we're talking about too. So I have a fairly decent idea where it's at, but to give us a better feel and how that's going to interact with the businesses that are going around there too. So
Okay.
we may want to put it on the agenda for next meeting, because that's prior to the 13th of November and that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We'll see what we can do for you. I'll put it down for next meeting. See if we can get Jason and Randy involved. Okay. Set that aside. Any other board member comment right now? Okay. We'll move on. Consent agenda. Tonight, that consists of approval of the regular meeting minutes of October 3rd and the budget work session minutes of October 11th. Bills payable in the amount of $193,671.90. Consider Marquette Chamber of Commerce correspondence membership. Received committee reports and other reports, including Recreation Committee draft minutes of September 19th and the agenda of October 17th. Fire Chief, Fire Marshal's activity report from September, as well as the Fire Department business meeting and officers' meetings minutes of September 11th. Sheriff's Department report of September. Road Committee draft minutes of October 3rd. Road Rehab Project summary October 17th. And the road millage summary of the same. Planning Commission summary of October 11th, And my supervisor's report was separate. I'm sorry. It is a little bit lengthy, and I'm going to refer to some of that stuff shortly. Financials, the preliminary financial statement for September. Correspondence not required. Board action is the Charter Communications weekly letter regarding lineup.
Consent agenda approved.
Second.
Motion and support. Ernie?
I'd like to pull out 2B on the chamber correspondence.
Okay. Actually, we can put my supervisor's report. We'll pull that out too. I don't need to go over all of it, but there's a couple things I want to clarify in there. So we're pulling 2B and 3I. Anything else?
Approve as amended then. Is that okay, Joe? It's amended.
Approve it as amended? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we need approval of the rest of the agenda unless there are some conflicts of interest.
Make a motion, we approve the remainder of the agenda.
John?
Could we, we've had a number of discussions about the Board of Light and Power, and I wonder if we couldn't bring that up under a community linkage.
Yep. There was kind of a miscommunication with John and me and Andra. This should have been on the agenda. So John's got some information he's going to pass out when we get down to that. But we will add discussion of Board of Light and Power. Does that sound reasonable?
We've got a form we could talk about.
Okay. We'll just add it.
It's
that
actually
way.
discussion of noise, of the noise complaints from the Marquette Energy Center.
Okay.
Right, John?
Better yet. Okay. So we need approval to amend it, to approve it as amended.
So moved, approved as of amended.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Changes. Okay, 6 is staff reports. Tonight we just have the fire department. Public Works is saving himself for our budget hearing next month, or our budget meetings. So, Chief DeMars, what do you have to share with us tonight?
Okay. We've had,
John, hang on. Ron.
Ron DeMar.
sorry.
Unless the board members have any specific concerns, the report pretty much is our standard format. I think a couple of things I wanted to bring to the board's attention. I did get a quick email out to Lynn and Randy, but I got the chance to talk to Gary Johnson today from Central Dispatch, and we finally have some numbers to implement our tablets. The cost has kind of been a moving target. The county is going to put in $500, and we're going to put in $400 for a match for a one-time fee to install the software into the tablets and to add the CAD system programming to our tablets. After that, we have an annual support that we have to enter into for the tablets. That'll include any update of software from there on out, or any tech support from the software company, the CAD, that actually developed the CAD program. That's $180 per tablet for $900 a year total for all 5 tablets for that tech support. We have not had those numbers before. It was kind of a moving target as Central Dispatch moved forward, and I'm on the policy board, and it wasn't from lack of any due diligence on Central Dispatch staffing. It was just the build out of the system and the upgrades that they had to do internally to allow them to develop and be able to implement the CAD program. And the other thing of note, and I sent it over to Lynn and Randy, but as of this weekend, we are now at 302 runs for the year. the bulk of which obviously are EMS-related type runs. We are 127 runs ahead of this time last year. So to give you an idea how EMS has exploded in the county recently, and we are not unique. Marquette City is experiencing the same demand on ambulance service. They're constantly shuffling units between Marquette, the Post, and Ishpeming and Nagani to try to provide coverage. So I was a little surprised at the numbers and when I crunched them, and you can see the period comparisons. And obviously, since the incept of us providing EMS services to our residents and to our visitors, it has always made up the bulk of our runs, just never this large percentage of runs. So it has kept us busy. We are still working through the billing process. We have a little snafu with our township names. Apparently we have names as Marquette Township Board, Marquette Charter Township, and Township Board. And that kind of threw Medicare into a bit of a loop. I think we crossed the final hurdle today with Connie. She's sending out some additional information, so hopefully we'll get that ironed out. But we have Blue Cross. As of yesterday, we were certified for Blue Cross for billing purposes, and the only thing left now is Medicaid and Medicare and any other supplemental insurance that that the individuals might have. But we're pretty much covered as far as the ability now to bill. Medicare is obviously a very big one. It'll probably make up the bulk of our transports in a calendar year. And it's just a matter of getting all the semantics and the names and what lined up. And Connie, our billing software contact tells me that our Medicare provider is a new hire with Medicare, which has not helped the situation. Every time Connie proposes something to her, she has to go to a supervisor, and apparently that's added a little extra time to get some of our answers back to us. But we are moving along, and the rest of the report is pretty much informational. If any of the board members would want me to expound on any of the reports, I'd be happy to.
Ernie?
Okay, reading your officers meeting on the grants, we're talking about like portable radios and that, and you have to come up with a match of $4,936 and that, and then you need to pay a one-time radio template of $250 per radio. Are you able to build that into your budget this year or next year?
The grant period, Ernie, runs through 2018, and it is built into the 2018 budget. We are purposely delaying the purchase of those, even going out for bid on those, until we enter the 2018 calendar year.
Anything else for the chief? Randy?
Not for the chief, but a clarification. What Ron was referring to, the issue we run into with Medicaid is they don't like having multiple identifications. They do an electronic funds transfer, so they want all of the names on all of the accounts to be the same. For our business, our federal ID number, we are identified as Marquette Township Board for our federal ID number. And for many of our accounts, we're either listed as Marquette Township, Charter Township of Marquette, Marquette Charter Township. They all have to be specifically identified as falling under our Marquette Township Board title, which is somewhat complicated because we're not the only Marquette Township Board in the UP. There's a second Marquette Township, General Law Township, in the eastern part of the UP. So that's what's compounding all this and conflicting it. We're waiting for documentation from the bank for them to list specifically all of the titles and all of the account numbers that fall under our Marquette Township Board category, and that's what the holdup is with Medicare.
One additional thing, probably more concern for Ernie. Connie did reiterate today that whatever institution we set up the automatic fund transfer the payments to, I know the board to try to do business with all the different financial institutions in our area has moved accounts around. She says wherever that one originally gets set up for the wire transfer for any of the revenues from the runs, please do not move that to another bank or routinely move it to another bank. It starts a whole new issue of going to all these different agencies and getting approval from them to pick up this new account. She said, so however, she doesn't care what institution it goes to ultimately, but wherever it goes, please leave it there. She said, you can move anything else, but don't move that, or we'll be back to square one with some of these billing issues that we're having. So, any other questions?
Ron, what kind of response are you getting since you started? From either the public or the other agencies or anything like that? Nothing?
Just nothing negative, positive. Nice to see the ambulance. We go to Lost Creek quite often, and when we were out during Fire Prevention Week, had a number of people. We brought the ambulance down to the
Static
Harlow
display.
Park. Harlow.
Static display.
Yeah, the static display at Harlow Park. And we had a number of people go through the ambulance, tour the ambulance from the township, and positive comments on it.
Anything else for the chief? Appreciate it. Community linkage. John, now you're up.
Okay. We had early on some indication with one unit on at the Board of Light and Power. We had at least one of our residents indicating that they could hear the noise of the unit while it was running. It seemed to me, and they called both the township and they called Board of Light and Power. And it occurred to me that we had early on sent information letters. Well, we sent them, when they came to our meeting room here and talked to us about the installation of those units, those 3 generator units. We asked whether the equipment they were putting in its standard state, would it be good enough to, because our residents were in homes that were very short distance from where they were installing it in the city. So our question was, would we be pollution free? We have installation that's on one level, and then we have a bluff, and we have residents there. So the concern was, would that change the dynamics? And would we have a concern about pollution? So we've had one call since the installation and the running of one unit. The running of one unit was heard by a resident in our township. So it occurred to me that, well, okay, the best thing that we can do is let people know that if you have some concern, or if indeed you have a complaint, we'd like you to fill out a form, drop it off, or send it to the township. We need to create a reservoir of this information. And that's what this was about. That's what I passed this out to the board. Since then, looking at the decibels of other communities using it, and looking at the information that has been sent to our managers in response to our questions about what would be the noise. I'll pass these out because in the Traverse City area, the decibels that they allow is less than what was heard with one unit running up on our hill. So it is important that we, at least in my opinion, it is important that we communicate to our citizens what they're to do if they have something to say about the units. And we're going to need that information to have to justify action or inaction on our part. And that's all that this is about. I'd like this to be sent to the residents who are in the area, and perhaps it's been suggested that we send it to all the residents of Marquette Township.
Put it on the website too, John.
And make these available here at the Township Hall. The point is that if you're going to have any kind of information on this is where it belongs, not at the Board of Light and Power. It's one thing that they may be made aware of it, and I'm sure they will be. But the point is that we need to have a repository of when these things have occurred and what is the magnitude of each of the incidents. And so that's all I'm asking. I think that we did well to write to them and ask them to respond to our questions about pollution, but we now need to take the next step to gather the information. So I'm simply asking that I'm suggesting that you support my recommendation that these be sent to the citizens of this township.
Comments? Pete?
And, John, is this the same person on top of Huron Street that I talked about last time? The person that we talked to on top of Huron Street? That you were talking about, someone came forward?
Say that one more time.
Well, you said you were talking to a person complaining about this noise. Is that the same
No,
person?
You talked to actually.
Oh, I did. I didn't know if you had someone else.
No,
Okay,
no.
yeah, all right.
And as soon as I heard that, I thought, well, we got to get busy. We've asked the questions and we've got the answers. And what's been passed out to you is the level of decibel is higher now in Traverse City than what they allow in the noise ordinance.
The Traverse City noise ordinance is allowing less than what we're hearing already, is what you're saying.
So we've got to keep moving on this. We've got to keep gathering things.
Yes, Randy?
I'm sorry, I'll just take a second. I think what Trustee Marks is referring to is the noise study that the BLP provided for us indicated that within 200 meters, which is the stream length that's being talked about, it's about 650 feet, roughly. Within that radius, the decibels are estimated to be at 70. And that reaches basically the houses at the top of the bluff on Huron.
I thought you had your hand, Dan.
When are the other 2 units scheduled to go online or fired up or?
We don't have a schedule for that. We
Information
don't
on
know. Mm-mm.
It can't be guaranteed gas to run them this winter, so,
Yet.
yet.
Line's not been run yet.
Ernie?
But if you remember what was in the paper about their one power plant on the south end, and the manager brought this up to me, and then it started making sense to me, is that if you read the article, and I have to paraphrase what the manager said, is that they're now tapping into the actual grid, which they said they couldn't before, So when you really look at that and analyze that, why did they spend $70 million? And why are we having 30% and 8% and everything else increase in that? They're tapping into the grid now. So they may not even turn on the other 2 generators, man. Who knows?
They were using the grid before, if I remember right, but it was unreliable or they couldn't get it when they needed it, and
I
So-
think the article that trustee, that Treasurer Johnson was talking about was in the paper, in the Mining Journal front page article about a week or 2 weeks ago, that indicated that now they have more access to the grid and therefore they may not need all of the generation from the south plant.
So what John's kind of asking is that we provide this form, and you've got a copy of it, to all of the residents of the township, or at least Bluff residents around that neighborhood, and have it in the office available if anybody calls or comes in and comments, so that we can have our own little cache of information, because there are people that we're responsible for. Dan? Dave? Sorry.
A couple of questions. I might be missing something. What John was saying is the decibel level that was forecast versus the decibel level that was heard. Do we have some knowledge of what the decibel level was that was heard?
He's kind of, if I don't want to speak for you, but what he said was that what's recommended in Traverse City in their ordinance is less that they allow than what we're already hearing. It's about 60 in here, and we're already hearing 70. I thought it was 75.
I guess my question is when all this information was put out initially, what was their claim to what the decibel level would be? And are they within those guidelines, or are they outside of those guidelines?
I don't know what
The
it actually is.
The answer to that was that when we asked the questions, would it be a problem for our residents? That's the only way we could ask it. We didn't have decibel numbers at that time. But our manager has received information from them in response to our letters asking for that information. We've got them from Sergeant Lundy and couple other people that do sound.
Studies.
We do sound studies. But the point is, prior to our looking at what was going in here, when we knew that it was going in, they showed studies, but the studies were where they had taken them. What we're talking about here, and what we've talked about from the beginning, what's always been a concern to us, is there's flat land where the generators are. There's a bluff, and then our residents have homes. And that's a big difference. But even if you just look at the studies that have recently been given to our manager, the decibel level that they're saying that will reach our residents is higher than what they allow in Traverse City for noise.
With 1 unit on it.
Lynn?
Yes.
I guess I'm still not getting my question answered. The information they put out prior to this being built presented a set of numbers that they could be anticipated for decibel levels. Are they exceeding those numbers that they published, or they are not reaching?
That's what I don't know.
We never got those.
Well, in the first
They did
meeting, we
discuss it, though.
didn't. Right, we didn't at the first meeting, and then the paperwork came in and they said, if I remember right, I thought it was 75 decibels, which was the sound of a vacuum at 1,000 feet. That's what I remember. And then Randy said yesterday, I think it was, that it was 600, we were figuring meters versus feet.
But I guess my question is, are we
So
exceeding that?
I don't know that. That was the second set of information we received from them. Initially, they didn't. And then later, that's what I remember, 75 at 1,000 feet. So I don't know where they are now.
The rest of my question is if they provided us with some decibel levels that we could anticipate, and we're not exceeding it is one question. But if they are exceeding it, what do we propose to do about it? Where will all of this go, and what's going to be the end result?
Well,
I think John's saying we need to collect information
it
first.
won't go anywhere if we don't gather the information. That's where it won't go. It won't go anywhere at all if you don't gather it. And we have said to them, know that we understand that B and P and L board has the unquestioned independent authority to determine the best means to provide electric service to our customers. They're customers. They can do that. But they cannot violate our community with sound or other pollution. And that's where we're going to take action. What action will we take? That's your question?
No, my question is,
Have they violated it?
have they violated our existing noise ordinance levels?
We're going to find out.
Somebody'd have to test them to
That's what I'm
find out.
saying.
We're probably
Randy.
going to have our own decibel be taken. We're going to have our own people do it, because it isn't where the noise is there. It's the noise in our community is what we want to check.
I understand all that, and I guess where I'm going with this is before we go out and start thinking about spending a lot of money for noise level studies and all that based on whatever we get back for reports. I mean, we gotta know where we're headed after that. If we establish that the Board of Light and Power is in fact exceeding the decibel levels that are
That they're suggesting.
lawful in this community.
What's acceptable as far as ocean and stuff like that?
Then how far does the board, let's just assume for a minute that they are exceeding them. And I think that's an assumption that we can't really establish yet, but then what would we do about that?
Well, but the only question that's being asked tonight is, are you willing to send out a form for people to fill out if there is something of concern to them? If you're not willing to do that, just vote no.
That's all he's asking
No.
right now, just to find out if there are issues in the community. Then we go to the next step.
We're not gonna, as far as, we're not gonna, here, the decibel's not gonna be in my level, okay, where I live, 2 blocks away. I won't hear that. But when I go on top of Huron Street, you can hear that humming. I have one generator.
Maybe when the second and third ones come on.
Exactly, but you have to find out what's acceptable to go. Randy, you had a
Randy
question?
I think
wanted
Randy
to-
might have some answers.
Yeah, he's just-
I'll answer the first question, is that what we received after all the questioning was an estimate from the BLP that within the radius of 200 meters, there should not be more than a 70 decibel. The issue isn't what are the decibels, the issue is the sound that's being generated in violation of our ordinance. And our ordinance is not based on decibels. Our ordinance is based on what is reasonable for the residents. And the director of the BLP has visited some of the properties that had contacted them with a concern for the noise and verified that in fact it can be heard at their properties. When they came to meet with us, they said it wouldn't be any louder than a vacuum cleaner. For anybody who is relatively close, but I don't know about you, but I can sure hear the vacuum cleaner in my house, and I'm not sure I would want to hear it all day or all night long. And I think that's the issue that the board would have to address. We at one point had a decibel requirement in our noise ordinance that was removed many, many years ago because they're unreliable and they're not defensible. So, the real question that the board would need to address, and it is the question that you addressed initially with them twice, is that you don't want them disrupting the repose, the peace, quiet of our residents based upon it, and they are obligated, in this board's opinion at that time, they were obligated to mitigate that. So I think that's where you're at. If you get into an argument of what decibel is acceptable or what decibel isn't acceptable, that'll end up in court, and you'll end up spending a bunch of money. Our ordinance does not describe decibels. It describes what is interrupting the peace and repose of the residents on a regular and continuous basis. That's our ordinance. Now, the question of how does that impact somebody who's literally across the street from us? That's a legal question that this guy over here is going to have to address. You know, in terms of what can you do about it if it is in fact bothering the residents. You know, I spoke with a resident today, and, you know, they're raising the question of what does that do to my property values? If you can hear that thing running and I want to sell my house, who's going to buy it? Which is a legitimate question, or a legitimate concern. It's not a tax question, it's a value question. It does not decrease the property values from the standpoint of taxation, but it may make it more difficult to move those properties. And I think that, does that answer your question, Dave?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thanks.
Ernie?
I think I agree with a lot of stuff that Dave brought up. One thing, we really can't move in any direction unless we have some physical data available. And all we're asking, or all John's asking, is to try and put something in writing to see if there is a problem. And if it's one resident, okay, we're gonna have to work on that. But if we get a number of residents who are complaining, then we have to take the next step and look at it and see what it's all about and that too. So, because right now, we don't really have anything one way or another in that.
To
Where
my,
I live, I don't hear anything.
yeah,
but
to my,
I'm not
to my,
getting-
to my knowledge, I think we have 3 that have contacted one or more board member or myself from that neighborhood.
We don't know what happens if they turn the other 2 on, to go with 3. If that's gonna happen. We don't know. All it is gathering information at this point in time.
And if you make this available to the residents, you'll begin to get some information, and we'll be able to decide what we want to do. But until then, keep in mind that the natural thing for people to do, if they've got a problem with B, L, and P, is call them. Do you want it? Do you want this in your file? Or do you want them to just keep dealing with the Board of Light and call it?
Why don't you put it off till next meeting, because that way we can read what he's handed out. Because I don't haven't even looked at it, and I won't look at it till tonight, so.
Put it on the next agenda.
Yeah, then we could, because
In the
you'll see
meantime,
the value of it.
Staff could
Yeah.
still kind of keep track of calls in the interim. So we have a chance to read all of this. Yes?
I think that's a proper way of doing it. That's why we got packets, we can read it ahead of
Andy?
time.
Just the last comment that I wanted to make, and I did send this information out to the board previously, but when the BLP provided the noise study that shows 70 decibels out to 200 meters, that's on flat land below the
Right.
top of the stacks. We're talking about the top of the ridge where they're essentially level with the stacks. That's where the noise comes from, the stacks.
2 weeks from now, we're going to have foliage is going to be down a lot more, and I think we're probably going to be getting more complaints.
That did come up in the discussion today that the resident had, is, you know, I can hear it, I'm not too concerned about it right now, but when the leaves are down, it's gonna be a lot louder. And he's probably correct.
Out in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep.
Well, it's, you know, the way he characterized it was, I don't mind the drip in my faucet until I try to sleep.
Baby you're trying to put to sleep.
So,
Okay, that'll actually be 3 weeks, because we've got a 5-week month, so our next meeting will be November 8th, actually, and I wanted to point that out anyway. November 8th because of our election. So,
That makes sense, John?
that's a Wednesday night.
I'm not so sure why this 2-page communication that would go out is so complicated that you have to wait 2 weeks to decide to send it out or ask our manager to do that. If that's what you need, that's fine.
Okay, next agenda.
I got 4, 5, 6 pages.
that's Traverse City.
Yeah, that's what he handed out tonight.
No,
You're looking at the
This-
Traverse City noise ordinance.
Right.
That's 7 pages. This was in your box last Friday.
2 pages.
Oh, mine's still out there.
2 pages.
Oh. So, sorry, because I didn't get it, John. I got mine Thursday or something like that. Friday morning.
Okay, that's better anyway, because nobody's had a chance to really think about this. It's not, anyway,
Still up there.
okay. November 8th, we'll put it on that one. Right. Number 8 is policy discussion, consideration, and development of Muley parcel zoning map corrective resolution.
We'll see about that.
You do, huh? Randy, do you want to give us a, no, Jason's not here.
I would love to, but I know Roger's chomping at the bit.
There's no reason to even bring it up.
No, Roger's got it.
Okay,
There's no reason for it until it goes to the planning commission.
Doesn't need to go to the planning commission.
Huh?
It does not
Ministerial
need to go to
change.
the
Something like this don't go to the planning commission?
Ministerial change.
They didn't see it.
Basically, your zoning, there's a lot more paper here than the issue justifies. Perhaps this is a fairly minor little issue. But in 1996, when the current zoning ordinance was adopted by Marquette Township, it had a delineation of exactly where the general business district ends and the development district starts in this particular location. You have a zoning map that is expressly a part of your zoning ordinance. Over the course of the last 21 years, there have been numerous amendments to the zoning ordinance. It was brought to the attention of the zoning administrator, and I thought perhaps Jason would be here to explain this, but my understanding is it was brought to the zoning administrator's attention that at some point over the years, the original zoning ordinance was at the western, it described the boundary for the DD and the GB districts at the western boundary of 2 parcels. And that's down by Subway, just west of Subway. Yeah, and in any event, at some point in the last 21 years, the zoning map, which gets updated periodically and which got put into a digital format, that boundary was moved from the west boundary of those 2 lots to the east boundary. After scouring, at my recommendation, all of the minutes and all of the amendments to the zoning ordinance since 1996, the zoning administrator assures me that there's never been any action by the township board in an amendment to change that. So in other words, what it is a ministerial error at some point, possibly when it was transferred to the, from the handmade maps essentially to the digital ones. Nobody can pinpoint exactly when that was, but the one thing that is sure is Michigan law says unless you comply with some very rigid notifications and procedural issues, you can't change your zoning ordinance. And even if you tried to change that zoning ordinance to move that boundary, notification would have to be given to everybody within 300 feet. You'd have to have public hearings and so forth. That never happened. So the law also prescribes that if you didn't comply with that, even if you wanted to have changed that, it would still be zoned development district, not GB, because an attempt would have been null and void. Here, there wasn't even an attempt. Somebody, over the last 21 years, made an error in converting or transferring information from one map to another map, from the west boundary to the east boundary of these 2 little parcels. Your zoning ordinance and your zoning map must be consistent with each other. All that this resolution does, it gives a lot of history, because somebody in 21 more years might look at this and say, how did that happen? So it lays out the whole history of what happened, and what did not happen is perhaps even more important. There's never been any kind of an amendment by this board, and this board is the only entity that can ultimately change the zoning ordinance. So The resolution as presented is designed strictly to reaffirm. It's not changing anything. You're reaffirming the original zoning that was always intended for those two parcels, and somehow on the map is not consistent with what the ordinance provides. That in a nutshell is what the situation involves. If you've got any more specific questions, I can try to answer them for you.
Are you changing the boundary lines?
No, there's no change. The original 1996 ordinance said the boundary between general business and development district is the west boundary of these two lots. That has never changed. The only way that can change is if this board says we're changing it. Never happened. Somewhere on the map, however, over the years, the map shows the line of those two districts on the wrong side of those lots. That is a ministerial error that somebody made. Sometimes people call those Scrivener's errors, where somebody was copying by hand in the old days from Genesis, and they left a word out. That's about the same thing that happened here, is when they were transferring information from one map to another map, they put the line in the wrong place. There has never been a change to the boundary. This is not amounting to a change in a boundary. This is reaffirming that we always intended that boundary to be on the west line of those two parcels, and we're just taking action to reaffirm that it's still there.
Roger, since the planning commission is responsible for areas and districts and stuff, don't you think the correct thing is just pass through the planning before it comes to the board?
No. I don't think for this type of correction that that's necessary. In fact, there is even an argument that this is such a ministerial function that maybe the zoning administrator would have the authority to just make that correction. I advised him against that. I said the cautious way to handle this, the most prudent way to handle this, is to make a record of it, reaffirming that original boundary, and have a resolution of this board to just authorize him to make that reaffirmation, or draw that line on the map. But this is not a situation where we are amending the zoning ordinance. Now, amendments, the question is well taken. If you're amending your zoning ordinance, sure, that goes through the planning commission. If you're going to talk about tiny homes, for example, that's been an ongoing topic, that has to start with the planning commission. But you're not amending or
Well,
changing.
I just didn't want to
anything.
short circuit the planning commission and their responsibilities.
Yep. I see
So
no
what are you
need.
bringing up to us if we don't have to? Vote on it. You said you
Just
can
caution.
already change it.
Just caution.
Just kidding.
I think attachment 4 shows it pretty graphically. It's a measurement, basically.
Using Erickson as a...
Yeah, using Erickson as a base.
Go ahead, Randy.
I move to accept the resolution authorizing the zoning administrator to correct the zoning map error.
Support.
And support. Any other questions for Roger or anybody?
This is just changing the definition of the property, really, when it comes down to it. If you're going from general business to development business, the other way around, yeah.
Well, really,
Only if it's been.
it's not changing it. I come back to it's reaffirming what it always was. Because,
Wrong choice of words.
Yeah, all right.
but if there was going to be an application to put some type of a new business operation or a new anything operation on the parcel, and there isn't anything pending right now. But if there was, so that there was going to be a site plan submitted, and they went to take a look at what can they do by right, or what can they do by special or conditional use permit, then that issue may come up. This is shortcutting that, so that issue doesn't come up on how did this happen. It was something that was caught, and you are reaffirming, again, not changing your zoning ordinance.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We need a roll call vote.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand?
Yes.
Trustee Everson?
Yes?
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes,
That motion carries 7-0.
thank you.
Excuse me.
Next up is assurance of organizational performance. We have 2 items that we pulled from the consent agenda. Ernie, you asked to pull the Chamber of Commerce correspondence membership, which was 2B, or not 2B. Couldn't resist that, sorry. One of those days. What would you like to talk about?
I'm looking at this and reading it over, and we've been in a couple, 3 years now and that, and I just have a question. Are we getting anything for our dollars?
Yes.
Well, I have to see it. I haven't seen it yet. And another thing, they talk about creating a welcome to Marquette guide. To me, Marquette, we're not Marquette, we're Marquette Township. If they're gonna do it, it should be Marquette area guide for new residents and businesses and that. So, but, I just haven't seen a lot that benefits the township, from the money that we pay and that. Just don't see it. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Okay, that's a good question. I would guess that I'm probably the one that benefits from it the most, and maybe Randy. The meeting that I was asked to attend yesterday with a gentleman from Northern who was in town was, and that's part of my supervisor's report too, I gave you a little information on that. I don't know what his title is exactly, if it's
Portland, Oregon.
if it's his own company or if he works for somebody, but his whole purpose really is to try to have communities talk and share resources and have conversations and work together. And Jason emailed me and he said, I'd like to get as much information out as I can, and would you mind coming to lunch or breakfast? So Pete was there also. He must have emailed Pete. And it was a good conversation. Those are the kinds of things that I get involved with this. And I always bring them back to you. If this is something you don't want me to be involved in, that's okay. It's $400, I think, a month or a year.
5 a year.
Yeah, $435. It's not a lot of money, but Jason has been, the executive director, Jason Snyder of the chamber, has been instrumental in facilitating of numerous meetings, most of which involve the city and Chuckley Township. And we have those Thursday, well, once a month meetings that some of you have attended with me, kind of fallen off for summer. I did, however, tell Jason that we've done enough talking. If we're going to go forward, and if he wants to have 6 or 8 people there, and the city wants to bring half of their commission, and, we bring ours, and we're just gonna sit there and eat chips and drink water, I'm not going anymore. We either have to, or get off the pot, because it's a waste of my time to sit there for an hour and a half and visit, and listen to them talk about what they do. If we're going to get together and have strategic conversations about how we can work together, share assets, share whatever opportunities we have, staff, whatever, that's the kind of conversation I want to have. I want to be able to meet, and if you remember my letter to the road commission, I'd like to have us meet with Northern and MAPS. Besides our planning commissions, we're already visiting with the Township Business Association. We've talked to the library. We need to have those conversations. So for me to just go and sit in there and visit for an hour and a half, and yeah, it's good to learn what they're doing, but that's not, it's not as important to me. So,
But you might be missing.
but you want to, when you put a year and a half or 2 years into that, you want to have something come out of it, and nothing has happened.
You have what can come out of that, Lynn? is that the cooperation and the spirit between the city and the township and the other townships. And if you remember years ago, they're like this, fighting each other. Now they're becoming more trustful of each other. You can talk openly and what they want. You know what they share are some of our dreams that we want to do. It's because anything we want to do, if we want to work together, they have to bring it to a vote. And the more times you meet these people, they feel comfortable with you, you know, it's a lot easier to do business with them.
Well,
And that's what you have to do, you know,
that's
when
what
you're
I'm
out, when
saying.
you're selling
It's been
something.
long enough.
Right, well, you have to say something too, you know.
Yep.
You have to get part of the conversation and then start getting in what we want, not always what they want. Because we talked lately about Marquette is Marquette, and that's all of us, advertising everything. We have to be part of that advertising thing when they're talking about Marquette. So, I think it's beneficial to us.
It has been, but it's time to have action. But the question we're looking at is, Bernie's wondering the validity of this, and I was trying to explain to him why it's important, I think.
I think it's important.
Randy?
So then I would ask is with your recommendation, what should we do? Because you're more involved in it than the rest of us. Should we go?
I think it's valuable for the township.
So we should probably, then the recommendation would be go forward for at least one more year and see if we,
And the one thing I did bring up yesterday too is, to Jason, is that they promised they were gonna change the name. I think that's very important.
They did that.
And I also said it in the email where I told them I didn't wanna go any further. So if they wanna meet, that's fine. I just don't wanna be a part of it. But I did say,
But it's more than just your supervisor.
no,
It always was. It's always because the
no.
they
the
want, well, I've been
supervisors
going
don't
for how
be-
many years, off and on, so. But they want the board members that participate to go there, to get to know the other board members and discuss it, so when you can talk openly about things. As long as you don't agree to it, you don't vote on anything, but it's just a good, I think it's good. I think it's well worth it.
Just need to make sure you don't have a quorum of board members there.
No, we never had more than two with me. Randy?
I'll move to accept the invoice then for payment for the chamber for year 2018.
Support?
Motion and support. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on my report, sorry I didn't get this to you sooner. My job took 3 days of my week last week. And you can see I was busy doing this stuff besides. Just a quick update on Senator Peters' office. I have not heard back from them. I did leave a message with the lease. You do have the letter from Road Commission Chair Ray Roberts asking us to have a meeting with them. So I don't know if everybody brought your calendars. They're asking for November 28th, 29th, or 30th. And they want 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Is that
November, what were the dates?
28th, 29th, and 30th. It's a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday at 3 o'clock. Any of those days work? It doesn't matter to me.
Any one of them.
Wednesday or Thursday would probably be better for me. I have payroll on Tuesday.
Yeah, Wednesday or Thursday would be all right with me.
That look good for everybody? Do you have a preference then, Wednesday or Thursday? Randy, how's your schedule, your work schedule?
Yeah, probably 3 o'clock would be fine. I don't know what, I can make it work.
On Wednesday?
Either day,
Doesn't matter.
Which day?
Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday?
Wednesday, the 29th of November, 3 o'clock? Okay.
Where?
They want to be here. It says your offices.
So I'll move to schedule a meeting with the township or with the Marquette County Road Commission on Wednesday, November 29th at 3 p.m. And the purpose is for,
Well, that's the second part of this. They would like an agenda. It's a work session.
it's a work
We
session.
would call it a work session. I don't know. I'm assuming they would too. I can recommend that. Excuse me. Would you like me to kind
Well,
of put an agenda together and see what you think, or are there things that you want to, 3 o'clock?
Well, the posting has to have a purpose, so what do you want to say? County road issues or county road commission,
Future plans?
future planning or something? I don't know. Okay.
Randy?
I don't know that it'd even be that specific. I think what you would want to do is put a single item on the agenda, and that is to discuss cooperative road
There you go.
maintenance for
That's
the next
all we gotta
15
put
years.
For the purpose, yeah. Cooperative road maintenance planning. Sounds good.
Okay. Is maintenance going to limit us?
No, it's a work session,
Okay.
as long as you don't get way off the topic.
Okay.
Correct, Roger? As long as you don't get way off the topic.
Anything to do with roads.
Correct. I mean, it has to have something to do with road maintenance, but road maintenance is
Still
a pretty broad
covers
topic.
replacement and
All depends on
plowing
how you
and-
define road maintenance.
Well,
long
it
as
won't be
it's broad enough.
replacement because we're doing the maintenance, but it would be what they will be doing to assist us in maintaining those roads. Whether it's drainage or, whatever.
Okay.
So we don't both spend money doing the same thing.
So that's the
They don't
motion.
have any
then.
money anyway, so they won't.
I need a second.
Okay.
I'll
Support.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. For Wednesday, November 29th. Thanks, Randy.
And I'm just gonna leave it at 3 o'clock, so it'll be open-ended on the time.
Not
so
put an end?
I won't put an end.
Okay. All right, that's the second part of that. I am going to keep trying to remind you, and I will put it in my next supervisor's report too, to remind you about that meeting. So our next meeting with the Business Association is November 14th here at noon. And Greg Pace was the gentleman that Dan had talked to probably a year ago about coming on the Planning Commission, wondering if there was an opening, and I believe that was right when I appointed Mike Springer. It was about the same time, right after that, and I told him that I had just missed that opening. And I said, as the terms change over, because they're somewhat staggered, contact us again. So that's why I reached out to him, because he was one of the first who had gotten a hold of me. And I've been asked whether or not I had gone to our book of information. We have applications that come in periodically from people who are interested in committees that we have. And I did go back to that book and contact everybody. The secretary and I went through and verified email addresses and phone numbers before I even appointed Mike, because I wanted to make sure I was contacting anybody who was interested. And many of them I never got a response back from. But I do have a log of all the people I contacted. So if anybody else is interested, absolutely. Steve Pelto gave me a name of a gentleman in the community. And I did talk to Greg because he called me back. So he has extensive experience in a lot of different things, accounting and engineering and computers and a bunch of different things. So we were going to meet at next week's Planning Commission, but it's been canceled. So we backed it off to the first November meeting, which is November 1st for the planning. He just kind of wants to see what they do. He does read our packets. He's familiar with what the township's working on. But if anybody else absolutely wants to, give me a name, Jason's looking. He's going to go through some of his notes and see if there's anybody else interested. So until we lock it down, I won't bring a recommendation to you. But if you have, I put in here if you want his name and email address. He said to just let him know, and you can visit with him if you like. Otherwise, we'll be here November 1st.
Just talking to him, he just definitely seems qualified for
Yep.
sitting on it. He's got a lot of background.
Yeah, he does. It's varied. And I did have a meeting with Steve Pelto just because staff had just gone through policy governance training last week. So I filled him in on some of that, and I was going to email him the policies we put in place because he hadn't seen them. My computer was on the fritz for 2 days, so I will do that. And we just talked about the commission, and I kind of pointed out that the structure and reminded him that he has two committees underneath him, and they are arms of him, and all three are arms of us. And the direction starts at the top and goes down. So he said, just let us know what we can do to help you. And Mike Springer and I met. We talked about recreation quite a bit, policy governance, and the effect that that might or might not have on that committee. I talked to our assessor yesterday and today about Buffalo Wild Wings and Cedarville properties. Those are our latest two that we're dealing with legally, because she was not able to be here tonight to give you those reports. We do know, if I reminded you tonight, that U.S. Representative Jack Bergman will be here tomorrow night from 6 to 8 p.m. Anybody who listens to this meeting on YouTube should have notice. If they listen to it tonight or tomorrow, it would be in time. The plan is to meet in here. They've sent out a mailing of who they're going to contact, so I have no idea who's going to show up. We did invite the Business Association, and I think that was about it, specifically. If we have spillover, then we'll go into the community room. But they have protocols. They have certain things they're requesting with microphones, and they wanted a stage. They didn't know if we had a stage in our community room and stuff. So I'm working through that. I'll meet them here tomorrow early. So 6 to 8 p.m. tomorrow night for the public. And then Jack's asked to meet with the board, and apparently some of you did not get that email. That'll be Thursday morning from 8 to 9:15 or 9:30. So whoever can come, I'd appreciate it.
What time was that one on Thursday?
8 a.m. to 9:30. The DDA met last week, but we did not have a quorum for the second time. So Randy's making an all-out effort to get as many people as we can in the next couple weeks. We started that calendar discussion tonight so that we can get the final notice of the corridor project dispersed and brought up here and explained to the DDA, and we can't get everybody together. So I'll keep you apprised of that. I did ask Randy, I wondered if he or Dulcie could go down to the tax tribunal session. Some of you are aware of that. That was held in Lansing between Escanaba and Menards down there. And he did go down. He can give you a quick report on that. It was probably pretty interesting in Lansing. And I thought it was an actual hearing. It was not, but I'll let him address that. And then I mentioned a little bit our discussion with Robert Liberty through the chamber, Marquette Chamber. So I just wanted to fill you in on all that stuff because there's just too much to leave out. You good? All right. Any public comment? Anybody left to make any comments? No. Meeting wrap up. Any announcements? Anything anybody wants to share? Randy.
Only announcements I have is elections coming up. It's too late to register now to vote. If you've missed that, you can't vote in November 7th. Myself and the deputy clerk will be in the office Saturday, November 4th from noon to 2. If anyone would like to get an absentee ballot or drop them off, or I can take care of it then. Election day is Tuesday, November 7th. The polls will be open at 7 a.m., close at 8. Make sure if you got an absentee ballot, it gets back that day, or if it's past 8 o'clock, it goes in the garbage. So make sure you get them in. And our board meeting is on November 8th at 6:30 due to the election on November 7th.
Anything else? Announcements? Manager's report.
Can I ask, clerk, sorry, if somebody wanted to watch a dark story, how would they do that, Randy?
There's I think you got in your email, or I got one on the email, there is a YouTube link to the hearing of the court on that day. And if anyone would like to watch that, they just have to go to YouTube and search for the Michigan Supreme Court, and I think they can find it there.
Yeah, if you just go to the YouTube page and under search, type in Michigan Supreme Court Oral Arguments, October 12th, 2017, it'll take you right to it.
Okay. Randy, manager's report? Anything?
You do have a printed report. Basically, as Supervisor Durant mentioned earlier, we did participate in 2 days of orientation to the policy governance reporting process. Myself, Superintendent of Public Works, Fire Chief, Assessor, the Planning and Zoning Administrator, spent 2 mornings, 4 hours each, going through the whole process. So we are in the process of putting that together for January 1st. Actually, you'll be getting it your last meeting in December to take a look at, because you plan to start the policy governance activity January 1st. So we're up to speed on that, and we're working on getting that ready with consistent reporting, so we'll be able to bring you up to speed on all the items that you are working on. Budget update, you did have your first budget work session last week. You got through the initial screening of the fire budget and the general fund budget. Your next session is on October 25th for any follow-up questions that you have on either of those 2 budgets, and then you'll be getting into the public works budget on the 25th, and also on the 1st, or the 1st of November, are your next 2 budget sessions. However you go from there, you are on a fairly tight time frame. At that point, you do have to have a public hearing. That public hearing has to occur at least 7 days. It has to be published at least 7 days prior to it occurring. Has to occur 15 days before the adoption of the budget, and the budget has to be adopted by December 31. So once you get past that November 1st budget work session, time's getting pretty tight to get to a public hearing and to get a budget adopted by December 31st by statutory milestones. So, as Supervisor Durant mentioned, I did go down to the hearing last Thursday. The hearing was on Thursday. Before the the hearing was scheduled for 1 o'clock, but it actually occurred at 12:15, to most everybody's surprise. But at any event, we did go down there, and it was the case of the City of Escanaba versus Menards, and how this case originated was it was a tax tribunal case. The tax tribunal in that particular case, it was a different tax tribunal than what we went before. And that tribunal ruled in the city's favor against Menards. Basically, they cited inaccurate data and found in favor of the city. Menards challenged that to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals reversed the tax tribunal and found in favor of the City of Escanaba. So you had Menards then was the one that was appealing to the Supreme Court, and what they were appealing is essentially that, in their opinion, the Court of Appeals exceeded its judicial authority in overturning the tax tribunal, and there were a number of reasons that they argued that. I didn't think any of them had any validity, but that was their argument. Jack Van Koevering represented the City of Escanaba, and I think did a very credible job in terms of defending the city's position and bringing up major points that for the last 6 years we've been trying to get before the Supreme Court. However, to my disappointment, what the ultimate request of the court was that it remand the case back to the tax tribunal for rehearing. Now, I'm presuming that Supreme Court now has up to 6 months to decide what they're going to do. And after the hearing, Supervisor Limbit was also there from Grand Blanc Township currently, because he's been involved in this with me for the last 6 years. And he has a situation going on in Grand Blanc Township now as well. Basically, what it amounts to is the court can do several things, and this was posted as a hearing, but it really wasn't a hearing. It was oral arguments. The Supreme Court had received approximately 8 separate briefs from different organizations and from different groups, and they had reviewed all of those briefs, and this was an opportunity for each of the attorneys representing each of the challengers, basically, in this case, to present what they thought were the most important points of their brief and to answer any questions that the justices of the court had. The justices didn't have many questions. In fact, only 3 of the justices asked any questions, and one of them was pretty aggressive. And he asked some very good questions and very pointed questions, and I think answered a lot of points, or at least fleshed those points out as to what's really relevant and what really isn't. No, it was Berquist. Yeah. Anyway, so he asked them very, very pointed questions, and he clearly had some things in his mind. So long and the short of it is, afterwards, our attorney, we participated in a separate brief with 33 other communities, and Bill Fahey was our attorney. It was kind of comical because, as they mentioned, this was posted for a 1 o'clock hearing, and it was over by 1 o'clock, and Supervisor Limita and I were standing out in the vestibule when he got off the elevator and looked at his watch and said, "Well, we got about 5 minutes before it starts. You guys have any questions?" And we basically said, "Well, what would you like to know? Because it's over." So he had no idea either. I mean, in essence, apparently the court has the flexibility that if the who they see as the combatants basically in front of them are there, they went forward and did an early call for 12:15 instead of 1 o'clock. So there were a lot of folks from Escanaba there, obviously. The courtroom was packed. They had 6 different cases going on that day, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. The others were all criminal cases. But the long and the short of it is, we asked Mr. Fahey, now that it's over, what can we expect? How long do you think it would take for us to get an opinion? And he said basically somewhere between 3 weeks and 6 months. They have statutorily up to 6 months. But he said if you had one justice who had a lot of questions, likely that's the justice that pushed it to get to the oral argument stage. So now the other justices, they'll go back and confer, and depending on what their opinion is, if they're fairly solid, we can probably get a position from them within 3 to 4 weeks. And that position could be anything from remanding it back to the tribunal with conditions. In other words, you will rehear this case on these basis or on these types of facts, or whatever they choose to do. They could choose to overturn the Court of Appeals, which was what Menard's attorney was asking them to do, was to find the Court of Appeals exceeded its jurisdiction and therefore overturn them and let the tax tribunal's decision stand. They could do that. And the other thing they could do is they could support the Court of Appeals decision and schedule their own hearing to determine their own facts and possibly go further than this one case, which is what we hope happens. From our standpoint, the best alternative would be for the Supreme Court to find that there is really significant question of fact and merit here, and schedule their own specific evidentiary hearing and then render a decision themselves. That would be, in our opinion, the best case. We think that would come down in our favor. That would then be able to at least going forward to correct some of the taxation issues that we're currently struggling with. But it could go totally the other way as well and simply overturn the Court of Appeals and say, no, the tribunal was within their authority and that decision stands. So they've got pretty much a wide slate. If they decide to have their own evidentiary hearing, that's going to be the 6-month timeline, in the opinion of our attorney.
He was down there, Lynn. 9 of us were here from Nagani, Ishmael, Chalkley, Marquette. Wondering, what are they talking about?
We had no clue. We had no clue. What in the hell is going on?
Yeah, we were
When we started.
well, and that is, I mean, that is really unfortunate. I tried, as soon as we found that out, I tried contacting, the folks back here to say, hey, don't wait till 1 o'clock because you're going to miss it if you do. And we literally, when Dennis and I both got there essentially at the same time, within minutes of each other, so we went into the court building and we were in the conference room, basically just catching up and everything, waiting to look, checking our watch. And we went up early, luckily, and doors were closed, and we said, wow. We asked the bailiff. He said, well, the case must be going long. And he said, no, they just started a few minutes ago. What case was that? It was Menards and Escanaba. Wait a minute, that's supposed to be 1 o'clock. He said they did an early call. We said, well, can they do that? He said, they did an early call. All right, fine, so we went in. It was interesting, but again, you know, if you want to see the complete testimony of both attorneys, and each of them only had 15 minutes. That's it. They were on a clock. They had to make their points. 15 minutes. The Menards attorney went first, followed by by our, I'll call him our attorney, the city of Escanaba's attorney. He had 15 minutes to make his points. The justices had the opportunity to ask questions throughout, which Berquist did, and then the Menards attorney had 5 minutes for a final rebuttal, and basically his 5 minutes was spent answering Berquist's final question. I thought it was really a good question because basically he asked, his question was, stated that he had been in Escanaba, he was familiar with the area, he knows there are other competing stores similar to out here, you know, they're all grouped together. And then he asked the question of the attorneys, he said, is Menards a publicly traded corporation? And they said, no, it's a family-held corporation. He said, all right, fine. Let's assume that I'm Menards, and I'm in Escanaba, and I decide I'm going to sell my store. What value do I place on it? Do I place the value that the tax tribunal says it's worth? Do I place the value that the local assessor says it's worth, or do I place some other value on it? And it kind of took the Menards attorney by surprise. He wasn't expecting that question. He kind of fumbled around a little bit, and basically his answer was, well, they'll hire a broker, and the broker will decide. And he kind of laughed a little bit. The justice kind of laughed a little bit, chuckled a little bit, and he said, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, what price do I, as the owner of Menards, put on that price, that building that I'm going to sell, that business? Well, there's all demographics and this, that, and the other thing. He said, okay, I have my answer. Thank you. So, you know, and I leaned over to Dennis and I said, it's the same thing as selling a car. You got a book value and then you got what you want to get for it. And, you know, they're not the same. And he's, you know, and that's a point that he was making with the other justices. And they all went, okay. So there's a good possibility that they may have an evidentiary hearing, have witnesses, have additional briefs be submitted, and more factual data submitted. So that's long and short of it. But if you want to see the complete thing, go to YouTube. In the search, just type in Michigan Supreme Court oral argument, October 12th, 2017. And it'll take you right to it. It'll be the first one that pops up. If you want to watch the rest of them, they're interesting. They were murder cases, and they were pretty interesting.
We already watched them.
Yeah. Long and the short of it is, don't shoot somebody on your porch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, Randy.
Manager Gerard, we do have a work session scheduled on Wednesday, the 25th. I have it listed as general fund. No mention of public works in that.
I did alert Kirk because I don't know if you're going to have any more questions on general fund. You do have the thing scheduled. You got all the way through the general fund articles, and you know, I told him to be ready for the 25th.
Okay, so he will. I mean, I can amend the post.
Yeah, I just mentioned him to be ready for the 25th in case, you know, you don't have any other questions for general fund.
Okay, yeah, because I just have to go through my budget, the treasurer's budget. There isn't much left to go through, really. I do have a small presentation. It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes that day, so we're going to have plenty of time to start, I guess,
Up to you,
Public
folks.
Works.
I think when we do talk to Public Works, I'd like to see an alternative recommendation to what he's proposing. I don't know if he can put something together or make some suggestions or give us some ideas. Because usually when he brings the budget, that's it. That's all he's got. And I don't like this one. I don't agree
Noted.
with it. I don't know about anybody else. That's just my request.
I will pass that along.
At least
But
the-
with, you know, certainly, I will be here, and if you have any, additional discussion you want to have on the general fund budget, certainly, the other portions of it.
Anything else for the manager? Okay. Review of motions passed and assignments.
Okay, tonight's meeting, we approve the consent agenda. Motion 1, motion 2 was approval of the regular agenda as amended. Action item 1 was to put the discussion of the noise complaint form back on the next agenda, so we'll do that. Motion 3 tonight was passing of the corrective resolution for the zoning map. Motion 4 was to pay the invoice of the Chamber of Commerce. Motion 5 was to schedule the work session with, let's see here,
Road Commissioner?
the Road Commission on November 29th at 3 o'clock. So I think it's a Wednesday. And that's it.
Okay, so items for the future agenda you kind of talked about. Conservation District really wasn't a motion.
No. I would like to see, we have to start looking at our committees again because we're getting to that end of the year where we're having some turnover. So Board of Review, we need them, make sure we have those. I'd just like to see all the critical committees staffed, so when we flip over to 2018, that we're not scrambling for anyone. Get some people now.
Reminded me when I was looking. Planning Commission.
So committee, I guess committee review or assignments.
We do need another person for the DDA. We need them now, so going forward we will too. So if anybody has anybody's that they're interested in participating somehow, they need to, do they need to own a business in the township or?
Have a business interest.
There has to be, yeah, there has to be a sharing. It's not just businesses. It just have to be like half and half. Thanks for.
So, yeah, so if we can get what we're needing for committees, maybe next month early, we can do an e-blast or something on what we need and see if any folks are interested. Maybe put it out on the calendar or something in the utility bills that we need for different committees, you know.
Okay. Board member comment? Anything anybody wants to share? Yes, Dave, you've been quiet.
I have a number of things. First is the rec committee meeting that was finished tonight. A couple things of note. First one would be the, well, let's see, the passport grant that was received in 2015. Has been an extension is being applied for by the recommendation of the DNR to move that and give us a 2018 completion date. And then the MNRTF 2015 grant that was awarded should be done this year. They've got the equipment in place now and they're starting to work on it. And the Underpass grant funding, I don't know if everybody saw I don't think everybody saw that. There's been another change in how the funding is being distributed. Came out from Jason, and basically it says as it stands today, the TAP grant can be used as matching funds towards the MNRTF grant. If you remember, the big rush was to get our MNRTF matching funds committed to before October of this year. And because they now say that TAP grant can be used for the matching funds towards the MNRTF grant, we have 92% of the match needed for that, so that's going to move forward. And that means that you have until October of 2018 to come up with the balance of the required match. The required match is currently $160,250, and that's the TAP match, because we don't have to have an MNRTF grant match now. We've already raised $54,240, and that leaves a balance of $105,730 to be raised by October of 2018. The rec committee tonight was kicking around a number of ways to go about that, and we'll flush those out and come back and see if we can recommend something to the board. That's it for the rec committee. The balance of the road committee and the planning commission, I submitted summaries into the consent agenda. If anybody's got any question about it, the only thing I would make sure everybody knows is the planning commission meeting has been changed to November the 1st at 7 o'clock to accommodate the move on the board meeting. For the road committee, that is also in the packet, and basically I can report that the road rehab project is complete. We have about probably 6 complaints that primarily deal with drainage issues, and I believe they're outside of the scope of the road rehab project. But the road rehab project is complete at this point. And it appears, if you look at the road rehab summary report, is we are some $44,000 under budget for the 3 years. And if anybody else has any questions about that, feel free. The last comment I want to make is there's been a lot of discussion about summary reports and verbal reports. And so far, there's no place in the agenda on the board meeting to accommodate it. I would recommend or suggest that it goes under item number 6. After the staff reports, we could just have commission and committee reports for anything that you want to hear about. But to go to all the trouble of making reports and then just put them into consent agenda, that's the same place the minutes were, and that seemed to be adding confusion, so maybe we want to have a spot to share those.
Yep, I think
Sense.
the verbals are a little more interactive. And I wanna
But I'm still not sure
duplicate
today
efforts.
where to put those.
We'll do that.
That's why we're here.
Yep, we will do that, committee reports.
Yeah, question for Dave.
Sure.
Since we're under budget for the road project, can we use that money for something else?
No.
For roads? For repair roads?
I don't think we're totally under budget. We still have restoration to do.
This is preliminary numbers.
Well, I'm thinking about it, Brookton Road. I told Dave earlier, if you ride down it, take a look at the shoulders, where you go into, especially down right before his driveway, it's down about that much on the far end. It's down about, I would say, 8-10 inches. And
I think it's going to be a serious problem especially if it has to go that way over the winter. The county
Right.
suggested that they were going to come out and fix that some 2-3 months ago. They went to all the trouble of putting cones there, but all the cones are as targets at this point. The cars are running over them.
You have to be very careful because the millage language is specific to surface restoration.
And improvements.
Surface restoration.
It says improvements and other improvements.
Surface restoration.
Sorry about that, I got the copy of it. But I'm worried about that, as much as he hollered about his roads all the time.
Well, I don't.
But it's a little dangerous, and that'd be a good point to bring up when we meet with the County Road Commission.
Yes, I guess it would be my opinion, and it falls some way down at the bottom of the list, that we need to kind of hold off on spending any money that we think we're under budget, because we don't have the final bills in yet.
Right.
This is preliminary.
Well, and there will still be some restoration done in the spring as well.
Well, and
Yeah.
what's going to happen is you're always going to have spots that are going to wash out. Until the grass seed takes hold, it's just simply going to happen. And some of those areas you're going to have to go back and fix. And it's not obviously going to be part of the road rehab project in the contract shall let, because as we learned on Vandenboom, that can wash out, and you still got to spend money to go back and fix it. And it's not necessarily on the contractor's shoulders to do it at his expense. That if he did it with due diligence and per specs when he did it the first time, then when it has to be done the second time, it's on our dime to do it. So I think we want to save some of that money, because there's going to be some of those spots in the spring.
I just think it's important enough that is a dangerous spot right now, that we bring that up to them.
And one comment I would make is it's interesting that apparently all the water problems occurred because we replaced culverts with new culverts and freed up the water flowing. And I understand a little bit more now about the county's approach to that. If you leave them plugged, you don't have drainage problems. And I'm surprised they didn't share that information with us before we went to all that trouble.
That's another hour meeting.
You like that? Look at it.
Do you have anything from planning to share?
Again, I did a summary from planning.
Yeah, no, that you
Other
might
than,
wanna,
if nobody has any questions about all the text amendments that went through the planning commission last week. And the only thing, if you don't have any questions, just to remind you about the November 1st meeting change. Those text amendments go from the planning commission to the Marquette County Commission for their comments. And after that, they come to the board with a recommendation. So you probably won't see them until the last meeting in November.
anything else? Yes, Pete,
I think Dave did a good job on the road project, following up.
exactly what I was gonna say.
You know, much of that hurts for me to say that. He did. He was very diligent in responding to customers. He's not always seen it the way they seen it, but, you know, you're dealing with a different set of prints too. So, you know, I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
I agree, yep, did an awesome job.
That'll cost me breakfast.
Any other comments? One more, motion then?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:12.
Randy,
Thank
the
you.
October